What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys had yourselves a wonderful weekend. And boy, what a week it was. And it's great to see you all in here. Crazy, crazy, crazy week. We had lots of content dropping and a lot of stuff about the WEF, a lot of stuff about the government, and a lot of stuff about corruption. Boy, do we have some more stories for you guys tonight. And actually, I'm happy to report we have a sponsor tonight. This is a first for the channel. But listen, everybody jump into the chat. I'm going to get let the room fill up for a second here. And we're going to let some people pile in. Make sure to give me a roll call. Let's see if we can get somebody from every province in Canada here in the chat. Make sure to drop your roll call while we deliver some news here on the channel. And then I'll bring in our guest tonight for the panel, because boy, is this going to be a great show. You're going to want to stick around for this one, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight's sponsor, it's gonna be a good one, and I got to be honest with you guys. This is something I never thought we'd get, but hey, I'm gonna bring it in anyway, so you guys can see it ahead of the show. We have the most unlikeliest of sponsors, and I only agreed to it because I thought you guys would really enjoy it. And it's something that would really appeal to you guys. But hey, Just In Tampons is going to be our sponsor for this show. It's not quality unless it's just in, of course. These tampons, ladies and gentlemen, they're diverse, inclusive, environmentally safe, trans-friendly, unracist, non-misogynistic, 6 times jabbed, made in the Ukraine, and gender-neutral tampons. As you can see by how comfortable Justin is with that up his posterior, well, if it's not all the way in, it's not just in. So go get your Justin tampons, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I had to make that today. I was making so many jokes about the tampons, but I do have something great coming in the forms of laughing at things like that. We're all here to have a good time, and we're all in this together when it comes to the ongoing pursuit of what we're going against with the government. We've seen the Freedom Convoy. We've seen many channels rise up within the ranks of trying to get the word out there, especially when we're censored by good old King Fancy Socks. And now tonight, it's my pleasure to bring on our actual sponsor. Somebody that we've actually locked arms and partnered with, and somebody I'm really looking forward to having this chat with on the show. And I think it's going to be great for you guys. So please welcome in Chris Vanderbos, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, of Str8Guds Clothing. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. Good. Yeah, you nailed it. I get Vanderbos. I get Vanderbos, Vandenbos. You nailed it first try, so props to you, buddy. It's good to be here. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's good to have you here. Now, for those who don't know who Chris is, of course, as it says in his title, he's with Str8Guds Clothing. Now, this is a project I've been wanting to announce for some time because, Chris, we've been in the talks with getting this together over the Christmas holidays. And I'll show a brief statement, and then we're going to get into a little bit of your history, how you got started with Str8Guds, and what Str8Guds exactly is. But Str8Guds Clothing, if you guys have been buying our merchandise, much like you see with the hoodie that I'm wearing, these were all done by myself. They're very generic. And I'd approached Chris and said, hey, look, I really like your style. I like what you guys bring to the table. And how about we do something together? Of course, Chris has his site, Str8Guds Clothing. And as you can see from, I'm going to let the slideshow play out. Some of the clothes that they offer have a very strong statement against government culture and a lot of the corruption that we see going on in politics these days. It's been my absolute pleasure working with Chris and Ange, his graphic designer. And not only does Chris have such great products to offer in here, but now Chris and his company are all unacceptable, as they've got the Unacceptable Fringe line of clothing. If you looked at our community posts, if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen last week, they've come up with some wonderful designs that are 100% cotton, high quality, Canadian-run company. And guys, get this, the best part, 10% of all proceeds go to veterans and helping veterans in need. It doesn't get much better than that. But I wanted to bring Chris onto the show tonight to talk a little bit about what started Str8Guds and where he's from, so that everybody had a better understanding. And maybe we talk a little bit about how we get to the fixing the country and how we get, things back to normal, Chris.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you gave me that lead in too, because it's important to understand my story. My story is just not, I was sitting in my basement, decided one day it's time to make some shirts. Like, my story is actually pretty unique. I started off as a police officer of 17 plus years. And then I stood up against the corruption early on through COVID. I saw cops were violating their oath, and they were being given direction by police leadership to violate their oaths. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. And I gave up my $120,000 a year career with benefits and pension and everything, walked away, stood up and said, you know what? I'm not playing this game with you. As far as I'm concerned, the oath is what matters. And that's what officers should be upholding first and foremost. We don't take direction from politicians. We take direction from the Criminal Code of Canada, but first and foremost, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's the oath that I took. So I said no. And as a result of that, I was the co-founder. I was instrumental in co-founding Police on Guard. And the last 3 years has just been this crazy whirlwind, man. I'm seeing what's going on in our country, and I'm like, this is not the country that my Opa and Oma emigrated to from Nazi war-torn Holland way back when the Canadian soldiers came over the mountain as my Opa, who's a part of the Dutch underground, killing Nazis, was running from Nazis, and the Canadian soldiers came and liberated him as he was running for his life. That's why we're here. We came here because of what this country represented back then, and seeing it disintegrate didn't sit well with me. So as a result, I thought, what more can I do? I feel like I've done everything I could at that point, but I'm like, I got to get creative. There's got to be something else I can do to move the needle. So I started the Str8Guds podcast, created the Str8Guds on Twitter, created the Str8Guds Clothing Company. And our clothing company is, like you said, 100% cotton for all of our tees. Our hoodies have some polyester. Almost impossible to get 100% TM or 100% on a. I don't know why that is, but it just is. But none of our products come from China, and you know, like I said, 10% goes to helping our veterans. 10% of all profits goes towards that. And the main thing is just getting it on people's chests and on their backs. The message of freedom, the message of I'm not putting up with this crap anymore. This tyrannical, oligarchish, stay silent or we'll cancel you woke nonsense. You have a voice, you have a personality, you have character and integrity. Hopefully, stand up for what you believe in, say what you think, and if you don't want to go and say it vocally, support our company, which is trying to do the right thing and get that message on your chest for an affordable price while helping some people along the way. So that's what we're all about, man.
Great. It's good to see it, because one thing I appreciated working with you guys is that anytime I tried to do something a little bit off the beaten path when it comes to political messages, a lot of these clothing companies online, whether it's TeePublic or Redbubble or any of these companies, they tell you, well, that's offensive, or we don't like the images you're using, so we're not going to promote that. We're not going to push it out. So it's nice to see that there's really nothing offensive about what you're doing. It's making a very bold statement. And again, the designs, again, kudos to the graphic designer, to Angie. They're off the charts. I absolutely love what she does. But that's one thing I'm seeing here is quality. When at the end of the day, I can't wait to get my hands on my stuff when it shows up. I was the first to order as soon as you said it was available for purchase. So I can't wait to get that. Just a reminder to everybody in the chat as well. I'll be doing a once a month giveaway. One thing we'll do is at some point during the stream, we're going to go through the designs for the Unacceptable Fringe line. I believe, Chris, we're going to do some limited run shirts at some point.
Yeah, we're going to do some limited run shirts. I'm not going to give anything away, so you're going to have to stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. But we have, like Derek said, we have the best designer ever. And when we come up with ideas, like Derek's the mastermind of his collection, right? His collection is his ideas, and he puts them in. He says, this is what I'm looking for. And Angie goes, bloop, 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 and she starts going to work and creating these ideas, you know, with these designs and putting them out there. The next one that's coming out is another one of Derek's ideas. It's awesome. And seeing how Angie brought it to fruition, I think people are going to be wanting to wear this shirt because, not going to give it away.
We're not going to give it away. No,
not going to give it away. But all I'm going to say is this: is when you see the shirt, you're going to be like, heck yeah, I want that on my chest, because I think every Canadian agrees with the message.
Absolutely. So one thing we will be doing, folks, because those are limited run shirts, once a month, I will be giving away one of those limited run shirts by draw to one channel, not to everyone who is a channel member. There's going to be a draw. You must be a channel member to get in on that draw. So if you're not yet a member, if you want to support the channel, it's a good way to get yourself a shirt for less and get your name in for the draws. And I'm looking forward to the designs that come in the future. Now, Chris, as we talk a little bit about your experience in policing, were you OPP, RCMP? What detachment were you with?
Ironically, I was York Regional Police, and tomorrow I'm going to be doing another podcast on the Jason Levine Show with David Menzies to talk about that incident, which was York Regional Police in my patrol zone, by the way, with my former officers. So that's where I worked. I did take a brief hiatus with the OPP, didn't like it, worked there for 3 months and went back to York. I wasn't into, the tickets and ride program all day type of policing, not to say that that's all they do, but where I worked, there was a heavy influence on it, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't a good fit. So I went back to York to finish out, the rest of my career until I hit that point that I mentioned earlier, where I just had to walk out the door.
So what was it that was your line? When did you cross the line and say, that's it, this is enough, I can't do it anymore? What was your moment?
it was, for me, it was a culmination of like everything at the same time. So I was working in a unit that was introduced for COVID, and that unit was designed to keep officers from going to non-priority calls. So then we would take the calls over the phone from people that had minor complaints, and we would work with them on trying to either take the report over a computer, or take the information over the phone and take, enter it into their computer, or if necessary, dispatch an officer. So I'm seeing all these calls coming in. Oh, I just noticed Johnny down the street is going to go skate on the pond, and he's supposed to be in lockdown. And I'm like, okay, I don't give a I'm not going to swear in your program. I don't care about your lockdowns. Like, the charter gives you the right to be outside. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms, a mandate saying you have to be 6 people in a home, 6 feet social distancing, whatever, lockdown. Like, I'm not doing this. And I would educate them on the law and on the charter, and I would get pushback. And I'm like, well, I don't care what the pushback is. I don't care about politics. This kid who's been locked up in his house wants to go out and blow off some steam on a pond outside by himself, and you want the police to come because you're buying into this fascist nonsense? So I tell him, no, we're not coming. And I cancel an officer from going. And then I hear about it. And then it kept going and going and going like that for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, I see that kid in Calgary getting arrested by the police for not wearing a mask. And they're kneeing him in the legs while he's on his skates. They're threatening to tase him. They're swearing at him. They hog tie him. And I was like, snap. That's it. Can't do this. I'm done. Time to go vocal. And I went vocal, as vocal as they come. And I've been vocal ever since. And I don't care. It cost me my career. But you know what? Like I've said on the previous podcast, I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth. I can look in the mirror because my integrity is fully intact.
Good. It's good to hear that, because that's one thing I've often said in my run for mayor, that I do want an audit of Calgary police based on the behavior that went on during the pandemic. And I still try to encourage people that despite there being some bad apples, you're going to find that in any business, whether it's police, whether it's at an office, or a retail outlet. But there are good cops out there, and there were plenty of good cops. We've seen some are still being prosecuted for standing up for what they believe in during the pandemic, and it's a shame to see that. And I mean, first off, thank you for your service, and thank you for having the integrity to step away. I think during the pandemic, the one thing that I find funny afterwards now is that some people start to forget all those little incidents, like the skating on the pond and being arrested. And not to mention, you've now seen reports of Fauci saying, well, we've now come to the realization that social distancing did nothing. There was no purpose behind it. And you start going, okay. And they say, well, it's been 4 years. We don't really want to talk about it anymore. We're bored with it. No, we're mad. We still need to talk about it. You locked us up. You took away our rights. I mean, look at what happened to Tamara Leach for running a protest. I mean, her and Chris Barber are still in court. We've got the Coots 4 locked up. What's your take on any of that situation with the Coots 4 or the Freedom Convoy prosecution?
Well, before if you don't mind, Derek, I'm just going to quickly chime in here first. To give amnesty, to suggest we made a mistake in good faith, is a complete and utter load of crap. Because you had the foremost authorities on the subject in the Great Barrington Declaration from the top schools in medicine in the world saying that this is unscientific. And this was early on. And they were lambasted and they were politically crucified and ad hominem. So don't give me this now. Oh, well, we were trying to do the right thing. Really? You didn't listen to the top people. Okay. Yeah. And that is what led to the convoy. That is what led to the Coots 4 incident happening, because you were not listening to people in positions of prominence that knew what they were talking about. You were silencing dissenters. You were acting like Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un and treating it like it was a communist country where if you dissent, you'll be arrested. Art Pawlowski is a prime example, Pastor Art, and all across Canada. And yet, when you rise up with, which is your constitutional protected right under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, freedom of protest and assembly, you then bring in the bootlickers and you start stomping on people with horses and tear gas and people butt stroking with your rifles and saying you're doing it in the name of national security against a group of people that were 100% peaceful. I was there the entire time. The only violence I saw was at the end. And I called out every cop that I had phone numbers of that I saw there in that capacity. And I said, shame on you. You disgusting, sorry excuse. Because the good cops that are out there, they just got completely roped in with this lot of people that put the almighty dollar for overtime pay over the rights and freedoms of Canadians to satisfy a dictator. It made me really sick to my stomach. And God bless Tamara and the Coots 4. I mean, the Coots 4, what's going on there? Does that sound like the proper judicial process to anyone in Canada? Like that's
So
my question.
I'd seen something released today that the judge is more worried about their pronouns and statements of how they identify when they go into court, rather than the fact that they're sitting in jail over charges that they don't have. They've sat over 2 years without any day in court simply because there's nothing that they can stick on them. They have nothing. So my question is, when is it going to get to the point where the law system starts to say, look, okay, we made some mistakes, let them go. Let's just, get past this and deal with it. And if they get sued, they get sued, and they should be sued because they overstep their boundaries, they overstep their lines. I guess what frustrates me is that even speaking with some police officers that I know in Calgary, I always hear, well, we didn't like what was going on and we didn't agree with the way things were going, but those, orders come from, higher ups, and you do your job or you go home and, you don't have your paycheck. And, these are guys, I understand they've got a family, they've got kids to feed and bills to pay, mortgages to look after, but it kind of just goes back to the paradox of people saying, well, I'm just doing my job. That's how we ended up in the 1940s, with I'm just doing my job. And while I can sympathize that, yeah, quitting doesn't help their situation, it just makes it worse. I mean, what could police officers have really done to make a statement at that time, do you believe?
Speaking up. As simple as that. It's
Yeah.
it's as simple as that because I wasn't the only one that left. I left
Okay.
with my brother who worked with York with me, and he left. And you probably pull it up right now if you wanted, find the letter that he wrote. Dave Vanderbos is his name. And he left
Mhm.
calling it out directly. But again, how much media attention did that get? And my best friends on the job left with me, but they didn't just leave. They first protested and they tried to change things. And when they realized that they were up against a brick wall of people that did not have any interest in actually upholding their oath in upper management, and they were just there to be ball lickers and get promoted. That's they thought, what's the point in staying? But there are many others that stood and stayed, and that's the reassuring thing for Canadians. I hope people understand this, that
Mhm.
I have had my phone and email inboxes filled with officers that I worked with or officers that I didn't work with that have been messaging me on social media saying, thanks for the stance you took. Thank you for what Police on Guard has done. Thank you for the integrity that you have and for exposing everything, because I've been standing up inside the walls and taking my sergeant to task or taking my colleagues to task and saying, what the heck are you doing? So it does have an impact. And there are people inside the walls of policing that are
Mhm.
working very diligently to continue to push back against this because they stand with you, the people. So don't go thinking that they're all, a write off. They're not. There are some really amazing officers. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of people that are willing to just accept a paycheck and do what they're told. And those are the people we need to weed out of policing, because those are the people, unfortunately, that aren't acting on doing their jobs and doing criminal investigations into a certain PMO's office, right?
Right.
Where there's criminality there and it's their mandate to investigate and they're not doing their job, which is neglected duty.
Right. Now, speaking of neglect of duty, and one thing I wanted to ask you, and you've mentioned earlier in this interview that again you're sitting down with David Menzies. That's been a hot topic issue over the last week here on the channel because I've been getting my information from different sources. Of course, I asked you during our meetings what your take was, but just while people are here, because again, I know and we're not going to go into relationships or affiliation with people, or anything that you don't want to get into because again you worked with York Police. What was your take on what happened to David Menzies, and where were lines crossed? We talked about line of sight, we talked about the 21 foot, or even in Canada as they call it, the 9 foot rule. Do you think lines were crossed by David, or do you think this was all the fault of the police?
Well, it's David's job as an investigative journalist and reporter to go and ask tough questions of elected officials that are elected by the populace to answer questions, because that's why they're there. And if there was
Mm,
a threat to her safety, then should the RCMP not have been within arm's length of her to make sure that they were ensuring her personal safety as she was walking in front of that building? But no, they weren't. They were nowhere in sight. And then as David goes up to scrum, all of a sudden the officer reemerges from behind a pole as David's kind of getting crunched into a bit of a funnel there, and they
right.
bump into each other, and he gets arrested for assault. Really, really, and
Well,
I mean, he
so
got released unconditionally for good reason.
right. Well, and I've been told that that's an old tactic, like similar to the old "oh, look, I found some drugs in your car and it's planted" kind of thing, where it's just a way to get everybody out of there and diffuse the situations. When, of course, they're going to leave with no charges. Now, whether that's true or not, my question again was the integrity of the police to simply make a whack charge. If you look back at David's history, I don't know if you'd seen the videos of when he was outside Trudeau's. I think it was a Christmas party when he was in Toronto, when he was outside of a bar, and he was pushed against the wall by jackboot thugs of Justin Trudeau's and threatened. And I believe he was bleeding in that one as well. Like I think they really roughed him up pretty good. So this isn't the first time this has happened to David Menzies, and that's where, of course, the discussion of a setup comes into play, because when you look at that situation with Freeland, I mean, Menzies would have known those officers were there. He would have seen them before going up to do his usual work. And like you said, he's entitled to do that. Um, do you believe any of this was set up against Menzies, or that this was um, done in a way to kind of give them a hard time or censor them? Or was this just one cop overstepping his duties or his boundaries?
You know what? It stunk to me the moment I watched it, and it
Hmm.
still stinks to me. Like I said, if you are her close protective detail, you're going to make sure you're keeping close protection of your target. And they allowed him to get within very close proximity to the point that the microphone is right in her face. Then all of a sudden he reemerges, and it's, you're under arrest for assault because they bump into each other. I mean, we'll find more tomorrow because I haven't spoken to David, and it's always my approach to everything is I want to hear all sides of the story. I saw the video.
Yes.
I know what I think right now, but I want
Yeah.
to know what David has to say about the situation. And based on what I saw, like I said, it stunk to high heaven because it looked like
Right.
they were that officer was looking for an excuse to arrest him. And again, for assault, there's a reason why he was arrested unconditionally. And now the lawsuit's coming. And they've already announced that they're going to be suing. And for good reason. Like, your officers aren't above the law. Neither are
Yep.
politicians. We're
Yep.
not above the law. And I understand certain people's disdain and distrust for police because the bad ones make all of us look bad. And
Hmm.
for me, I was disappointed that more people didn't stand up loudly when I stood up. And I've since left as a result because, like I said, my integrity is not for sale. But that doesn't mean that there's not a chance now, right now, hoping that there are some people that have the fortitude and integrity inside the walls to really become vocal, to take a position of leadership against this nonsense and say
Mhm.
this needs to stop because the
Absolutely.
public trust is almost completely gone.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to be interesting because that's one thing I've said from the beginning is that we've only seen one side of the, technically not of the story, but the angle with the David Menzies situation, because it was one camera, right? The camera
Right.
does lose shot of people at sometimes, so it's going to be very interesting to hear David's take. I look forward to that, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't already follow Chris, Chris, that's going to be, is that going to be broadcast on your Twitter at all, or is that on a YouTube, or where can people find
Yeah,
that
it's more.
interview?
It's going to be on the Levine show. Jason Levine show is, I believe, his exact handle is at one. I want to make sure I got it right so I don't misquote it. But at the Levine show, what is it? Goodness gracious! Sorry for doing this
That's
here. I want
okay.
to make
That's okay.
sure.
I'm putting you on the spot. I was just going to plug really quick that if anybody's not already following you at Str8Guds over on Twitter, here is Chris's Twitter page. Make sure to follow over there. Of course, I'll pull up a link for Levine as well before the end of the show, and we'll get people over there as well. But looking forward to that interview. I think it's going to be great. When we talk about the corruption and we talk about everything that's going on in the country, one thing I touched on this week that I was curious of your take on, because I've been told that this is happening in other cities. Like when I talk with guys like Theo Fleury, they talk about things like installed mayors, and we talk about Jody Gondek in Calgary or Olivia Chow in Toronto. I did a story this week talking about how a new tax has been pushed onto Calgarians, a municipal tax for single-use items. So now, if you go to a drive-through, for example, and we tested it over the weekend, they now ask, "Do you want a bag?" Like if you order a Big Mac at McDonald's, do you want a bag with that? It's 15 cents. And do you want napkins? That's another 15 cents. Paper straws, another 15 cents. And it's all these taxes going on that were already worked into the price of what was essentially going on in retail since the dawn of time. Is that anytime they buy condiments or napkins or stir sticks, that's worked into the price of what they're charging you at the window. Now they're saying these are single use. Now, my concern with single use is, do they do toilet paper next? Because that's single use technically, or paper towels, or however they want to run things. Food is technically single use, right? I guess the design is set up now to make everybody poor. They want you to just spend every dime you have on taxes. That when you look at 30% of your pay going to the government, and then you're charged DST everywhere you go. You're charged carbon tax. You're now charged this fancy one-time use tax, and the costs seem to keep rising. So when you say that we just need to stand up and say this is going to end, what in your mind is going to be the push to end that? I think a lot of people have faith in guys like Pierre and say, well, he's going to change everything. And I've said he might change a few things, but I don't think he's going to change everything. So without revolting and essentially storming the castle gates, so to speak, what do you think it is that Canadians can do to be heard and get their voices heard and see change?
Well, I mean, a prime example and a good example is looking at my fellow countrymen, or my parents' countrymen in the Netherlands. If you look at what the BBB, the Boer-Burgerbeweging Party, which translates to English to being the Dutch Farmers Party, the Dutch Peasant Party, they formed their own political party and they took over the Senate. And this is recent. This is people getting involved. And I mean, it kind of pains me to say this, but like, Canada doesn't necessarily have a history of being complacent and kind of ambivalent. Like we have a history of getting engaged when there's atrocities happening in other lands. And yet here, for whatever reason, the last 3, 7, 8 years, we've seen how many scandals, how much nonsense going on in our government, criminal offenses being, occurring. And people go, well, the football game's on, I guess, or the hockey game. Not everyone. There's been people that have been engaged, and I've seen that firsthand too. But I thought there would be more, and I'm hoping that continues to grow. And now it's growing. But I think what needs to happen is people need to get engaged politically. People need to get engaged, canvassing. For example, if a group of people were to get together in the municipality and look at, like you mentioned Chow, and you mentioned in Calgary, what's her name again, the mayor of Calgary?
Jody Gondak.
Gondak. You have these people that are, in my view, puppets. That's what they are. They're puppets. And the municipalities, the cities, the province, the country, it's all becoming corporations. And they're being installed by corporate elite and people that are putting them in place. And they're not answering to the citizenry. They're not answering to the public. So getting involved municipally and getting a town hall organized of people that agree to then maybe canvass. And then from there, put a name for it that's going to run for mayor, and then canvas on what the platform is to take things back over, attending town halls and becoming vocal at the town halls to vocally oppose what's going on, and in making yourself engaged. Because I think a lot of times these folks have felt like they can run unabated with their agendas and nobody's there to oppose it and say, this is not going to fly. And we need to get more engaged. We need to take a more genuine personal interest in it. And ask yourself the question, how many town halls have you been to in your municipality?
Well, and that's a good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. That's one thing that we've always talked about in other circles, is getting involved. That's one thing Jordan Peterson always told me, is that this is where, whether it's a school board, whether it's your HOA, whether it's your local municipality, getting vocal in small areas is usually where I find the most change can start and where it happens. When you look at government on a grand scale, federal only affects your life in small ways, I should say. Now, don't get me, we'll get into things like carbon tax, but when you look at provincial or municipal, those are the decisions that are made that really affect and impact your day-to-day life, because municipal politics dictate your property taxes, they dictate parking fees, they dictate your utilities, a bunch of things, whereas provincial also dictates a lot of what you can and can't do within the confines of that province, your tax rate, etc. Whereas the federal government can adjust things like your carbon taxes, your GST, your now we've seen the Trudeau government put their steel boot down on a lot of things that are questionable, like taking away guns, locking people in their homes. They've really stepped over their lines, but typically the federal government, in terms of people's day-to-day lives, has very little impact and concern in comparison to what I find municipal or local politics do for each individuals. Now, again, that's just my personal opinion, but I do think that getting involved does help. Have you seen a lot of uprising from a lot of police that said that you're in contact? Not uprising, but a little bit of pushback. Have you seen a change in the police since the days of the lockdowns?
Oh, 100%. And this is something that people need to understand too, is a lot of these officers that stayed on and got vaccinated, they regret it and they're upset about it too. because they were told if they don't get it, they were shown the door. And I know in York there was 120, I believe, that held off and said no. But that's out of almost 2,000 officers. So, and they went forward, they got it to keep their job, and I think now the word that I'm getting back from a lot of these folks that are reaching out to me is either I wish I didn't take it, and I'm upset that they pushed me to take it, and I'm upset that basically the police service acted this way and they should have stood up against the government. I should have been more vocal. That's the one side. Or the other side is, I'm glad I didn't take it. I'm glad I was vocal, because now I've gained a lot of credibility amongst the rank and file as being the guy or gal that was right from the beginning to say what I said and do what I did. And that's reassuring to me, because to me, this could end tomorrow if all of the police were to say enough is enough. The rule of law stands, and the government's breaking the law and has broken the law, and it's time to do our jobs and investigate it. It'd be over tomorrow.
Right. That's so. I agree fully with that, and there's a lot that goes on within the government when you look at even this recent inquiry into Trudeau's vacation to Jamaica and how they're not going to release emails. They're not going to release any kind of documents that show what exactly was the arrangement that went on. I don't know too many friends in this world. I don't know about you, but I don't have too many friends that would give me an $80,000 villa as a gift, free of charge, and not expect some kind of a kickback. So there definitely is a lot of corruption when it comes to that government. But one thing I'm curious about, again, from a police officer standpoint, the gun ban that we're now, I guess, up in arms, no pun intended, about. When we talk about people with their pals, or people who go hunting, farmers that need access to firearms in order to weed out infestations or populations of rodents, it's a little alarming to think and see that people are believing that the crime of guns in this country is happening because of people who have registered weapons. It's alarming at best, because I think the statistic, at least I saw, was somewhere around 96% of the murders or gun crime that happen in Canada are done by firearms that have been brought in illegally,
Right.
firearms that are banned, gang activity. So obviously what the government is doing is a major distraction. To me, it's akin to the 1980s war on drugs. You call a war on guns, you're not really getting rid of the violence, you're just causing a distraction to get everybody upset about something. So where do you stand on the gun ban, and I mean, how do we get our guns back is the big question.
Well, where I stand is that it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's not grounded in any stat or fact or metric that is actually in the interest of public safety. I've never in my life made an arrest on a law-abiding citizen that lawfully acquired a firearm and committed a criminal offense. Now, I've had plenty of arrests and interactions with individuals that were unlicensed firearms owners that had scraped or drilled the serial numbers off of firearms and were engaged in criminal activity with said firearm. It's like, to me, it's very simple. We need to ask ourselves this question. Have we seen this before in history, where a government disarms their populace, their law-abiding populace? And then what happens after that? If you don't know the answer to that question, go start reading it up. It's pretty alarming. So to hear that this is what's going on, what we need to be doing is we need to be demanding that whatever government comes in, whether it's Pierre and the Conservatives, actually, really, that's our only chance, I think, at this point. I mean, the PPC folks are really hoping Max will gain some traction. But my view is whatever politicians that we have in place, it starts at your MP's level in your riding.
Yes.
You need to be going to your MP in your riding. You need to be lighting up their email and their phone number and attending their offices. They're public officials elected by you. The House of Commons means the House of Commoners. They're a commoner representing you. Go and let them know exactly what you feel. Start petitions, getting people together and saying, this needs to be repealed immediately. Bring it to the House. Just make sure this is brought up. Introduce a private member's bill. There's an idea. Represent us and see if other MPs jump on board with it and have this repealed. Because why in the heck are they disarming law-abiding citizens? You know how many hoops you have to go through to get a firearm lawfully in this country?
Yeah.
And they're targeting them? So the gun grab just speaks to, in my view, something more nefarious, because why would you want to disarm law-abiding folks?
Well, and that's my concern, is that, again, this is to just take away, like, when you take away people's rights, you take away their ability to feed themselves, look after themselves, and then you take away their guns. They've got nothing left. They've got no defense. They've got no way to look after themselves. And the government essentially has free reign. And that's where I get a little worried when you hear about things like UBI, more dependency on the government. This is essentially where I believe they want us to be heading. Like, when we talk about everything that's happened over the last 4 years, it's I hate sounding like Alex Jones or like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but it starts to come down the line that this is all by design. When you look at 15-minute cities, when you look at lockdowns, when you look at the gun grab, when you look at UBI, when you look at, you can't come to work unless you take this procedure, we'll say, because of
Made
YouTube. They're introducing MAID. That's my biggest concern coming up in March is the younger population these days can't cope. I know you're a father as well, and I know with my kids, my top concern is I've seen how the lockdowns affected them mentally, despite trying to keep them positive. My wife and I certainly never talked about government issues during lockdowns, or we never talked about COVID. We didn't talk about our frustrations unless it was in private, because our kids were trying to keep their spirits up. But you can see now that these kids were all in the middle of kindergarten to grade 3 at the time, that now they're lacking social skills. Those are the years they're supposed to be building them and learning how to interact with other kids. So when you see things like MAID being offered for basic depression, it screams population control, and it screams um, government dependency with
it
UBI.
screams
With
eugenists. That's what it
Yeah,
screams. It screams
it's
eugenics, which Hitler was a eugenicist. And Bill
yes.
Gates is a eugenicist. And all the sitting people in the World Economic Forum are eugenicists. It's all
Mhm.
about depopulation. It's no different than having the supreme Aryan race. And it's hilarious that people on the left could buy into swallowing the pill of calling people that oppose this nonsense alt-right Nazis. First of all, socialism was a leftist crafting.
Mhm.
Okay. And the Nazis were extreme leftists. And those that were not ideal eaters were culled and
Yes.
eventually exterminated. And now they're
Mhm.
bringing about the same sorts of crap again. And in the interest of inclusivity, they're using this modality. And people are
Right.
stupid enough to believe it. And to me, it's genocide. It's crimes against humanity. It's disgusting. And we need to find our moral courage and integrity, stop being divided on petty nonsensical issues, and band arms together and like arm in arm together, and let's end this crap because it's
Mm.
got to stop. My God.
Well, and that was what was concerning with Davos this week. That I mean, we've seen the Argentinian president in there giving them hell, and that was good. I appreciated what he went in there to say, because as soon as I saw him there, I was thinking, oh, is this going to be buyer's remorse for Argentina? But he stuck to his guns, and hey, props to him for doing that. He even flew commercial, which I think is very applaudable given the behavior of typical politicians. You talk about security details. I mean, the guy was on the plane signing autographs and taking pictures. It was fantastic to see. But when it comes to Davos, especially this year, and again, another story we covered on the channel this week, Chrystia Freeland showing up there to talk about what she said was investment in Canada, where the main topic of discussion at the WEF this week was misinformation and disinformation. And just so happens to come out on CBC and a bunch of other prostitute sites this week that, hey, guess what, everybody? We've launched a new app with the government of Canada to make sure that you're not being fed any misinformation or disinformation during our next election. Now, that is scary, because when you look at what happened in the US with, I don't care what anybody says, I believe what happened to Donald Trump was rigged. There's a lot of people that say, no, it wasn't, but come on. When you look at the ways you can vote these days, when you look at the on-bringing of hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants into the country, they're essentially brought in to buy votes. Um, do you really think, between everybody here, that this is the end of Justin Trudeau at the next election, or are you as nervous as I am that there's going to be a little bit of foolery going on?
What election voting systems are they going to use? Is the first question I'd ask. I mean, that's a concern. Dominion, like, hello.
Yeah.
Not sure if there's, again, I don't know. What I'm hoping for in an ideal perfect world is that there might be some modicum of integrity left in the election system and process. Not sure if there is, but if there is, I'll say this: if there is any genuine integrity left in the voting system. Stockboy's as good as gone because of what he has done to this nation. And yes, there are some holdouts that still like him, but they are now the small fringe minority, because the vast majority, I go everywhere talking to everyone about this. I am unapologetic about it. I can say in good conscience, hand to God, I have not had one face-to-face interaction with somebody in 2 years that says, I like what he did. I like who he is. I like the man. He needs to stay as PM. And I'm talking face to face, not Twitter trolls and bots and stuff like that. I'm talking face to face. And I go and talk to everyone all the time. So, I mean, this is just my circles, and my circles are fairly broad given, the fact that I'm all over the place. But I don't know. I don't see that he stays in. I don't see that he has a chance given what he's done to the general morale of this country, let alone all the other devastating impacts he's had.
Right. Well, and I mean, in Alberta, like, that's the one thing here is, I mean, you can talk to anybody in Alberta, and of course, nobody here votes Liberal. So you're not going to hear that kind of comparison. So I'm always curious in places like Ontario, especially Eastern Ontario, what the kind of general dialect is about Justin Trudeau. Because when I was in Ottawa in 2023, the end of 2022, sorry, I noticed, like, in the center, it's a lot of government workers, and of course, a lot of them support things like the Liberal government. But anytime, like, I'd stop in at the convenience store attached to the hotel I was at, you're at the airport talking to people. Um, you can hear murmurs of people saying, "I don't like what's going on here." So it's really surprising to me. Again, when you look at, I guess, Canada's version of its electoral college, and the fact that most of our I guess our voters, or where our lines are drawn, exist, the per capita down in that little pocket of Ontario. It really makes me question. I think Pierre's got a good footnote on that section, given that he runs in Carleton. But it really makes me nervous when you think about Dominion, when you think about everything that's going on. The fact that Trudeau still has the hubris to stay, despite everybody saying, even in his own party, he should leave. What are we going to see when it comes down to an election? And that there is scary, because people have always said we're never going to see anything like the Freedom Convoy again. But if Justin Trudeau were to pull off some kind of phony election win, I'm worried about what we would see. And again, I'll never condone anybody do anything violent on this channel, but I think people would snap if he was to win another election.
If he were, it would be 100% unequivocal proof and evidence that it is rigged. Indisputably so. Did you see the UFC event last night? You have packed house in Toronto, the liberal hub of Canada, the epicenter. And yeah, okay, they're UFC fans, but it was raucously chanting F Trudeau. I walked downtown Toronto a month and a half ago wearing my Justin Trudeau shirt from our company, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus. And I'm getting high-fived and thumbs up by everyone, and people asking where they can get the shirt in Toronto. And these people were of every different walk of life. Nobody likes this guy. He's destroyed this country. We used to have some semblance of understanding and respect for our fellow man, regardless of their background and sexuality and religion and all that other stuff. We understood that there's differences there. We didn't have to agree on everything, but we respected each other. He's sowed so much division. It's insane. And people are finally past that now. They see it and they're sick of the turd. It's time to flush.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Before we wrap up here on the channel, Chris, and again, we've been all over the map in terms of topics here and discussion tonight. There was a reason for that. And again, a lot of it was bringing you onto the show here to talk about your company and where you're at. Again, people have this opinion, or this formed opinion now that cops, well, all cops are bad cops and everything. I wanted to get your opinion on a lot of these discussions, because one thing I have found working with you, one thing I'm sure everybody's heard now listening to this show, is that there are still, even though you're not with police anymore, there are good cops out there, and that you're not all in the bad seat. But let's talk a little bit about these clothes. Let's talk about what you're doing now. These designs that have come from Str8Guds. Now, again, you guys were fantastic to work with. And I will vouch that again, when I got together with Chris and Ange, the first thing they said is, "What do you want? You tell us what you want. This is your product line, your design." Um, and they delivered in spades. I mean, their hoodies here, I really like the designs that you do here, Chris. The fact that you put the logos on the sleeves, with these bold designs on the front. Um, Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a limited run design that is going to be coming, and they're going to be changing out regularly here on Straight Goods. I will be giving away one of those limited designs in any size that whatever you fit. If you're a channel member, you're entered automatically into a draw. I'll be giving away once a month one of those limited designs as they change out. But let's also take a look at what you have on the men's line. Um, on regular shirts, this is where Straight Goods has been born. This is where it's come. Um, I mean, you've got I Will Not Comply, Small Fringe Minority Club, A Nation Divided, Stand United. Like this line screams, no woke clothing. Um, how how has this affected you in terms of business? Have you seen a very positive reaction to this line?
Oh, hugely so. Hugely. Hugely. And more so when I wear it out in public, because I only wear these shirts. Like, this is what I wear every day. And people are always asking where they can get them. And we're seeing sales happening. And it's just, for me, it warms my heart, because it's like, okay, I'm not the only one who thinks this. People clearly agree with this. And when I came up with the idea to make these shirts and to start this clothing company and give money to the veterans out of the profits, and use this as a means to pay the bills and at the same time get the message out there, it was a gamble. But you know what? It's clearly something that people agree with, because people have had enough. And going back to what you said about the people not liking cops, I get it. I get it. I
Mm.
didn't like some of the guys and gals that I worked with, but I like some of the guys and gals that I worked with as well, that had integrity and stood for what was right. You know, there, because at the end of the day, it's easy to say I hate all cops, but when somebody's armed and coming into your house in the middle of the night, and your kids are with you, and you want to protect, make sure that you're protected, you call 911 and you hope that a good officer shows up. And there was a lot of good officers that I worked with that did the right thing even when no one was looking. The issue
Right.
is the reason people don't like cops is because of the ones that don't. And they make everyone look bad, and they shouldn't be on the job. They should have their badge removed, and there shouldn't be amnesty for anybody that does that. And there isn't. We're held to a high standard most of the time, unless, being processed by a corrupt system, which seemingly is what we're dealing with now. But yeah, so these shirts, I mean, this is what I'm doing now, because I left, because, like I said, my integrity is not for sale. I'm trying to move the needle. That's why I'm doing the podcast. That's why I'm spreading the message. That's why I'm trying to get people to get behind being vocal, even if it doesn't mean saying it with your mouth, because you don't want to talk about it at the dinner table. You don't want to talk about it out with friends at poker night, whatever the case might be. But wearing it on your chest, wearing it on your back, says who you are and where you stand. And you might find that more people agree with you than not as you're going out and about wearing them too. So that's the hope. That's the idea behind it. It's going well for only being 2 months in. And as we cruise along, it's cruising fast, because we're getting a lot of subscribers quickly and a lot of support quickly. So that's reassuring.
Good to hear. That's great. And again, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder that 10% of all profits go to helping veterans, which I think is a great thing, Chris, that you're doing with your company. Our veterans are very well, they get the short end of the stick when it comes to um, I guess, compensation for their services. So thank you for that. And thank you for supporting our vets. Of course, too, am taking a cut off of my profits from the unacceptable fringe line, ladies and gentlemen, to add on top of what's going to veterans. So don't forget that whatever you're buying from Chris's store, whether it's unacceptable fringe, whether it's their other designs, this is going to helping veterans. So not only are you supporting a local Canadian business, but you're also helping out our veterans. And I think that's a great cause. And Chris, I thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. And I look forward to the work that we're going to do again in the future. And hopefully we can have you back onto the podcast again at some point. Where can people find you again, Chris?
Come visit at Str8Guds, Str8Gudz on X. And again, go to str8gudz.com for our merchandise shop. But as we go along, like I said, we're doing a lot of podcasts and get the message out there. And I sometimes just put videos of things that are going on that are ticking me off, and I'm putting my 2 cents in on. So follow along on there. And I appreciate you having me on, Derek. It's a pleasure, man. And I thank you to your audience as well for listening. And I look forward to working with you as we move forward. I love what you're doing.
Sounds great, Chris. Thanks again for coming on. Appreciate having you here on the show.
Likewise. God bless.
Take care. Same to you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring an end to tonight's podcast. A little shorter tonight, but we're trying to stay on that 1 hour mark as well. We got videos to put out for you guys later this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I hope you guys go grab your Unacceptable merch over at Str8Guds Clothing. Again, guys, I'll be sporting it here on the channel, and I can't wait to show you guys just the level of quality that's coming out of that stuff. I'm very excited for when it arrives. Just a reminder again, I'll be giving away one design every month to one lucky channel member. In order to get into that draw, you must be a member of the channel. And if you are chosen, of course, we'll get your sizing, your shipping information, and we'll get you set up with some Unacceptable merch. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show, and I hope you guys have a safe weekend as things move forward. Be on the lookout for all of our content dropping this week, Monday to Friday. There's lots to talk about this week. And I'm very excited to see that. I didn't even mention at the beginning of the show, 15,000 subs, you guys. My God. We hit 14,000 Thursday and then 15,000 Saturday. So I didn't even have time to talk about 14,000 subs. Thank you so much to everybody who's come out and joined our large fringe majority here on the channel. I'm looking forward to growing further and showing you everything that we're going to bring. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a wild ride. So stay tuned for what we got coming down the pipe. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope again you have a great week and enjoy your days and stay safe, stay healthy. I will catch you on the next one.